When you think about the word Scientology, what does it mean?
I'd rather be dead than to be there.
Seriously, you say that?
Oh, absolutely. I contemplated just driving into a wall and just killing myself.
You're being serious?
Absolutely.
Suicide?
Death would be a better existence than living there.
When you say beating people, what do you...
Punching with your fist into the face. We'd be in meetings and he would punch people in the meeting. Like while they're sitting.
You say things like that. That's so hard to believe though. How can an organization do that, period?
Under the guise of religion. You have thousands and thousands of these little aliens attached to you.
I have aliens attached to me.
Everybody does, especially you.
Either it's brilliance or the people who represented the government that approved it to be a religion are idiots. So before you watch this interview, I want to preface a few things because a part of this interview is going to be controversial. There's a lot of areas where I push the guest and some areas where he's going to say some things that Scientologists are not going to agree with or like. They're probably going to hate some of it on what the guest says. So while we did this interview, we decided to reach out to David Miscavige ourselves. We sent the email. Our executive producer, Gerard Heron, sent an email to him saying, I'm the executive producer, Patrick Bet-David, and Entertainment Media, YouTube's #1 channel for entrepreneurs. We just interviewed Mark Headley, and in an effort to provide objective, fair, and balanced coverage, we'd like to offer Mr. David Miscavige equal time to tell a side of the story. Thank you, Gerard Heron. That was our email to him, to be able to sit down with him, because there's a lot of questions I have. I've worked with a lot of Scientologists myself. I've had many good experiences. I am not one myself. There was a time in my life where I was extremely curious as an atheist at the time. I went and studied everything. I'd go to every church and I'd debate everybody, all these tough questions, because I was trying to get clarity for myself. This is the response we got from the Church of Scientology. Dear Mr. Heron, thank you very much. Controversy about the church is inevitably traceable to the same handful of bitter former members kicked out for their malfeasance and ethical lapses many years ago. Those who seek to introduce controversy where none exists have an agenda. In their case, it is always financial. They get paid to feed tales to tabloids that are salacious and untrue. They know nothing about what is in our new television channel, our spiritual headquarters in Clearwater, Bridge Publications, our international dissemination and distribution center, and our new churches that span 23 nations and 6 continents. They know nothing about Scientology Media Productions, our humanitarian, drug rehab, and social betterment programs, and our volunteer ministries who have helped millions around the world with remarkable success. They have no credibility. Those who live in tin houses shouldn't throw can openers. We suggest you look into them. See, for example, and they have a link below for you to find out more about the gentleman I'm interviewing. Give full disclosure, no one's getting paid for this. We are not paying Mark to do this interview. We don't pay our guests to be interviewed on Valuetainment. That's full disclosure. Mark and I don't know each other. We don't have a friendship. We don't have a relationship. First time I ever met him was when he was a guest on this show. With that being said, as you watch this, you will notice a couple parts where he gets pushed very, very hard in certain areas. And then there's an area where I pose a question that's going to give a perspective that nobody probably has thought about when it comes down to the Church of Scientology. So I ask you to watch this with an open mind from beginning to the end. And I really want to hear from you to see what you took away from this interview with Mark Headley on the stories regarding Scientology. Truth or not, I want to hear from you. With that being said, here's the interview with Mark Headley. So I got a call from a few entrepreneurs, good friends of mine. They said, Pat, what do you think about Scientology? And I said, listen, I think the best way to answer the question of what I think about Scientology, and I have my own opinions about it. I have a lot of friends who are Scientologists, and I've worked with many in the business who are Scientologists. I said, let me reach out and find out who we can interview that can tell you all about Scientology, and we can go through questions. So we contacted David Miscavige. He's the one that pretty much runs Scientology, and we realized the last time he did an interview apparently was 24 years ago with Ted Koppel. And so then after that, our team did a little research. We came up with a name that we found, Mark Headley. We contacted him. Now, this may not necessarily be the favorite person that Scientologists would want me to interview, because it'd be a lot different if we did David. But if we can't get David, we wanted to get somebody. We got Mark here. And for some of you to know who Mark is, Mark worked with the church for 15 years, from 1990 up until 2005, 4 years after L. Ron Hubbard died.
He was there for 15 years, the INT base, right? The international base, which is...
It's the facility that controls and runs Scientology internationally.
Internationally. And you guys got roughly, what, 5,000 people that work for the Church of Scientology, give or take?
Yeah, and at that facility there was about, it varied, but there was about maybe 500, 600, 700 people at that one facility in California.
Got it. And he also wrote a book called Blown for Good, which we'll talk about the book, which blown for good, he'll tell you what blow means. Blow means when you step away from the church, because he stepped away from the church and some ugly things happened to him. He's going to share some of that experience. And aside from that, you were also in a recent Emmy award-winning series called Scientology with Leah Remini, The Aftermath, right? There's now going into 3 seasons. You've been interviewed on that multiple times yourself, so maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. But with that being said, thanks for coming on to Valuetainment. I am looking forward to this sit-down. So before we get into it and get a little bit about your experience on your background, I know your mother was a Scientologist. In 1979, she joined the church. You were 6 or 7 years old at the time, and then afterwards, all you know is Scientology until you started working at 16 till 31. But what is Scientology to you? When you think about the word Scientology, what does it mean?
Now when I think...
Then? Yeah.
I just knew it as like a belief system. L. Ron Hubbard has written thousands and thousands of policy letters and bulletins. And the policy letters have to do with how you work in an organization and they also apply to business, Scientology businesses. And then the bulletins have to do with the teachings of Scientology and the auditing, the counseling they do in Scientology and the courses and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So I went to a Scientology school when I was little. I did Scientology courses at the Scientology Center at night. And that's sort of all I knew as a kid was that's how we did things. You just, they have certain ways of going about living and that's all I knew as a kid. So when I was recruited to work for the Sea Organization, it's almost expected when you're a kid in Scientology that the best thing you could possibly do is join the Sea Organization.
Because of?
Because that's the most dedicated group of Scientologists.
Got it.
They dedicate 1 billion years. You actually sign a contract, 1 billion-year contract when you join the Sea Organization.
Meaning what? Meaning if you live 1 billion years for the rest of your life, you're with them.
Yeah, like when you die, you need to come back the next lifetime to work for them again. In the Sea Organization, sometimes when people die, they actually have an in memoriam notice that goes out, and it says at the end, this person is granted a 21-year leave of absence, and we expect to see him back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, did you yourself, your mother was one until you joined, so for your mother was a Scientologist 11 years from 79 to 90 until you joined and started working in the INT base. Did you look at Scientology as a religion, or was it more a secret society type of a thing, like a Freemasons? Was it more like a personal development, Tony Robbins type of esque group that had been around longer than he had been around? And it's kind of like the Earl Nightingale type of, I'm learning how to process issues, how to work better. How did you view it when you were in it? Not today, how did you view it when you were in it?
Well, they kind of drilled into us the whole religion angle. Like, we're a religion, we believe in, these are our religious beliefs. So when I was there, I would say I viewed it as a religion, but at the same time, when you're at the international headquarters, there's crazy shit going on you all over the place. So when you see that stuff, there's a lot of mental gymnastics happening to justify we're doing this in the name of religion. Like this guy, David Miscavige, is beating people.
You actually witnessed him doing
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When you say beating people, what do you...
Punching with your fist into the face, shoving, kicking, punching, kicking, throwing people across tables, against walls.
Who are the people that this is happening to?
Most of the people that he would give beatdowns to were international executives. So the people that were in charge of running Scientology. They were the most beat people at that property.
These are influential names. These are influential figures within the church.
Yeah, if any Scientologist knew that the people that he was beating, they would all know their names. Like Mark Ingber, Mark Yeager, Guillaume Lesèvre, Heber Jens, any of the people, Mike Rinder, these people that he would give a beatdown to were well known executives in Scientology, and they're also in the Sea organization. So the people that are fighting and the people that are beating each other up are the top executives of Scientology. So it wouldn't be a public member like a person who goes into an org in Cincinnati. That person wouldn't see or be part of any beatdowns. It's all behind the curtain.
Did it ever happen to you? Did you?
On 2 occasions, David Miscavige struck me. And one of the last occasions was in the 2000s. It was shortly before I left. And he punched me, and he basically, I had glasses at the time. He punched me so hard in the face that my glasses broke. And I went up against a cabinet and kind of like a desk unit. And when I didn't fall down or anything, but when I kind of regained myself, he saw that I was coming for him. And he's not a big guy. He usually has an entourage with him, though. And as soon as he saw the look in my eyes, these 2 guys grabbed me and they just took me out of the building. And as I was being let out of the building, he said, "Did you see that? That guy was going to hit me." And I said, "You bet." They were leading me out, I said,
He said that?
Yeah, he said, "Did you see that? That guy was going to hit me."
Now let me ask you this, not to play the devil's advocate, but how many other people have come out saying what you're saying about David actually hitting people?
At least 20 or 30 other people.
20 other people have come out saying this has happened.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you, if that is the case, how come he's still running the entire thing?
Because they've got a group of 50 people there that they write affidavits for the people.
Right.
They give them to them.
Right.
And they sign them.
Yeah, but...
So he's got 50 people against the 30 people that say, that never happened, he never touched a soul, David Miscavige never even yelled at anybody. Once he found a little birdie outside in the grass and he picked him up and nursed him back to life. I mean, the affidavits that these people are writing, they're like pure fiction. But and if they wanted to, they could have 200 of those affidavits.
Has there ever been a deep investigation into the church or no?
Absolutely.
Like deep investigation?
Absolutely. I've seen government drone footage of the international headquarters that the FBI showed me on a laptop.
And what's been the court ruling afterwards?
It was dropped.
So, but you see how that... So I'm not trying to defend the Scientologists. I'm not trying to defend the other side. I'm just trying to get an argument on both sides to say, okay, if that's really happening, why hasn't the court because if the court, so somebody may process it and say, well, the court probably didn't because David paid him off.
Well, no, I can tell you exactly how they get out of it.
Tell me why.
Because whoever has the best lawyers and whoever spends the most money on their legal team is the one who wins the case. And Scientology, in the cases that have been brought against them, have, like myself and my wife sued Scientology. And Scientology spent tens of millions of dollars fighting that case.
Your case?
My case.
Just your case?
Just my case. Scientology has an unlimited legal and private investigator and dirty tricks budget that they can pull from. They have an entire spy wing in Los Angeles. In the 1970s, there was a group called the Guardian's Office, and that was the spy wing of Scientology. They perpetrated the largest infiltration into the United States government in its history. You can Google this. Guardian's Office, FBI, it'll show up. I think it was 11 of Scientology top officials were jailed, had jail time based on this whole thing. Mm-hmm. The FBI conducted a raid of several Scientology facilities, and I think it was in 1977. And in that raid, they found documents that exonerated people that Scientology had sued, and they found all this evidence about how Scientology had basically framed these people, all sorts of dirty tricks. Okay, that organization is called the Office of Special Affairs today, and it's in Hollywood. It's on 6331 Hollywood Boulevard. And that organization is the one that hires the lawyers, they hire private investigators.
Is it part of the church?
It's absolutely. It's okay. The people that work in the Office of Special Affairs are Sea Organization members. One thing you got to know about Scientology is that L. Ron Hubbard, if he wrote anything, it's in stone. It can never be changed. And L. Ron Hubbard wrote a policy that says when somebody leaves Scientology and if they attack Scientology or they speak badly about Scientology, the policy is to destroy them utterly.
Is that public to the members?
No.
That's public to the 5,000 that work there? Or
it's an internal policy.
Who knows? Who has read that? The 5,000 people that work there?
Most of them probably have.
And they know about it. This is a common thing. People would know it. If they leave, you have to destroy them.
Even to a point, there's a book, it's called the Ethics Book. And that is a book that any Scientologist can read.
Yeah.
Anybody can read it,
Yeah.
even if you're not a Scientologist.
Yeah.
And in there, it has crimes and high crimes and misdemeanors. And in that, it talks about if you associate with a suppressive person, if you help a suppressive person, if you give a suppressive person a platform to speak out, these are high crimes. So either way, this group, the Office of Special Affairs, one of their sole purposes is to destroy critics of Scientology. That's all they do. They actually have graphs on their wall in their desk unit of how many Scientologists they've cut connections from these suppressive persons.
Some may say, well, that's common in other religions as well, right? Like I was part of a group, then I watched the religion on what happened in front of my eyes when a couple of the people stepped away from the church. Their families turned against those two people. It was very ugly when that happened. I'm like, wow, that was pretty ugly. And they used to be lifted up and all this other, but just because something happened.
Yeah, there's one thing in Scientology, it's called disconnection. They have different words for it in other religions.
Yep.
Okay, that's one thing. So I leave and you don't want to talk to anymore. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
But when you call child services to try and get my kids taken away, or you have private investigators camped outside my house.
Are you saying that from somebody else, or that happened to you?
No, that happened to me.
They called child services to take your kids away.
Child services got an anonymous tip that our kids were in danger. And child services showed up to our house. When we were working with the FBI in the investigation, we gave all the information over on this child services thing to the FBI. Without saying it, they said, yeah, they did that. So that's what I'm saying. You can say, oh, well, other religions. I don't know how many other religions have millions and millions of dollars dedicated to spending on private investigators to follow former members.
Okay, I don't know the exact dollar amount.
I'll tell you this. There was an individual who worked at the international headquarters, and he left in the 1980s. David Miscavige, and this is documented. This has been reported on by the Tampa Bay Times. 2 private investigators were paid by David Miscavige, and they reported to David Miscavige. They watched this former Scientologist who worked at the Ant Base for 25 years. 2 private investigators. That was their whole life. They were paid millions, just 2 guys were paid millions and millions of dollars to watch one single ex-Scientologist. That's one.
How important was that one?
He was the guy that David Miscavige, they have these levels in Scientology.
Yeah.
They have OT levels, operating Thetan levels, and you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get through these levels.
How many levels? I've seen 15 levels, I've seen 10 levels. How many levels are there?
They have 8 levels.
Okay.
Okay. This guy that left, David Miscavige, thought he took 9 and 10 with him. Because they don't have a 9 and 10. Like they have, L. Ron Hubbard wrote a chart that goes from OT1 to OT15, but OT...
That's what I've seen, the OT1 to OT15.
Yeah, but L. Ron Hubbard only finished up to 8 before he died.
He himself
only wrote...
Truth Revealed is
that's
number
right.
8.
He only wrote up to 8. So
Got it.
They've been telling Scientologists that these 9 through 15 exist, but they don't. That's fiction. But when this guy that left, David Miscavige thinks, oh, I think he took 9 and 10 with him. Because the guy that left worked with L. Ron Hubbard.
So this is not a regular guy that left that they spent $25 million on. This is a pretty influential guy that they left. Okay, so let me...
But either way,
so
you say it's like other religions. Well, I worked there for 15 years, I've seen other things, and don't get me wrong, I've seen other horrible stuff that happens in other cults and other religions. But from working there for 15 years, I can tell you that Scientology, and Scientology has been around since the 50s. Scientology has spent 60 to 70 years perfecting this spy ops, this black ops type of engagement against former members. So there might be other places that do it. Scientology's spy operations are not low level. They know how to do stuff.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, Enron is a very big company, multi-billion dollar company. They have some of the best lawyers, better lawyers than anybody else at that time.
Yeah.
They still were taken down. I mean, you can go through Bear Stearns. These are $50 billion empires,
Yeah.
bigger than Scientology, bigger than a lot of these are massive empires. And if the proper investigation is done, they still go down. How come that hasn't happened to Scientology? And I know Scientology has, give or take, 20 to 30,000 members. I
Yeah.
don't know the exact numbers. You would know better than I would.
That's about accurate. That's accurate.
20 to 30,000 members. And, you know, the biggest name is probably Tom Cruise. And you have Travolta. I know in the past, Seinfeld dabbled with it a little bit, but he says, I was never part of it. I just took a few courses. Brad Pitt used to be there when he used to date a girl who was a big Scientologist. You know, he used to dabble with it a little bit. You have some other names. Katie Holmes, all these girls that were with Tom Cruise all used to be a part of it. One of Tom Cruise's ex-wife that introduced him to Scientology, she left.
Mimi Rogers.
Yeah, she used to be Scientology. And Tom Cruise is a part of it. Greta Van Susteren is a Scientologist herself, and she works for Fox News. You know, I don't know about John Travolta. I mean, aside from John Travolta's style, I dressed like John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever when I was in the Army. He's got great taste. He knows how to dance. But I don't know if I would put John Travolta as a genius. I don't know if I would put him in that category.
He's not their best spokesperson.
I would tell you, Tom comes across as a very smart guy to me. Tom does. When I saw Tom's interview with Matt Lauer, and he's going back and forth, may have, you know, some people said it hurt his career, but he made the comeback. That interview, when you listen to him, there's parts of it where it's kind of like, you know, this guy's making sense. And he's pushing Matt back. They're going back and forth. And Greta's not a dummy. Greta's a smart person. So if it's what you say it is, and you're not the only person that's saying this, why have so many smart, intelligent people have been turned on to this? Why is that? Is it just because of the power and the fame, or is it because the content has actually changed our lives?
I explain it like this. Let's say you have a relationship problem. Like you just can't get into relationships.
Okay.
And some Scientologist says, hey, we have a course. We can help you with relationships.
Sure.
I already know as a Scientologist, that is, and they call this a ruin. Something that you have in your life that you can't figure out and you can't solve it. And they say, we have a course that'll help you with that exact thing. And then it's $50, $100. You do that course. When you do that course, you find out there's actually another 10 things that are messed up with your life that you didn't even know were messed up. You just wanted to sort out getting a girlfriend. Okay, well now they sell you another $5,000 worth of courses to handle those 10 problems that you figured out. Okay, fast forward, 15 years later, your third divorce. You spent $500,000. And you've been chasing this relationship thing that then turned into all this other stuff. And it doesn't matter what your ruin is. Scientology has a course that'll handle that ruin. If you're a person that is not good at communicating, they have a communications course. If you can't get along with your family, they have a course called How to Get Along with Others. You can do that course. They've isolated, and this is the genius of L. Ron Hubbard. He isolated all these different areas of life that people have problems with, and they made these little $50 courses. That's the cheese. Once they get you in the trap, then it just goes like that forever. All the way up to OT8, it's always a bait and switch. All these things, they say, oh, you've got these aliens attached to you.
So it's creating imaginary problems to have a solution for the imaginary problem, which is called the Hegelian dialectic, which is...
Exactly.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am, but this is the best part of it. It's like a house of cards, this whole thing.
Right.
But you build it.
Right.
So you're
it's
the one.
It's an old tactic. I mean, it's
they
very...
get you in.
Right.
You build the house of cards yourself, and you're navigating all these problems that you have now essentially
Sure.
You've put in your own roadblocks in front of you, and they're saying, oh, this is how we can get you through that roadblock. And that's essentially what happens. Now, I've talked to Scientologists that have gone all the way up to OT8, and they're like, yeah, I got nothing. Like, if I could have rewind and got rid of all that, I'd be right where I am right now. You learn a lot of things in Scientology about yourself, but most of those things are prompted for you to say. So they are trying to get your money. That's the bottom line. They're trying to get your money. And they're also trying to get you to get other people in so they can get those people's money. And now here's another thing. And not a lot of poor Scientologists. If you know people who are in Scientology, most of those people that you know have money because they don't need poor people. They don't need people that don't have money because there's like, what are they going to do? They're going to do that little $50 course and then what? That's it. Okay, that's not a good value for them to get in those sort of people. And L. Ron Hubbard, I think it was in the 60s or the 70s, he actually wrote this program. I think it was called Project Celebrity. And he made a list of all the people that he wanted in Scientology and said, go get them. And they've been doing that ever since. They get one Scientology celebrity in, and then he gets one or two other ones in, and then that one gets one or two other ones in. And so even though they only have 20, 30,000 people in Scientology, 5,000 of those are giving them a few $1,000,000 a year. They don't pay they don't pay these 5,000 people that work there. They're not making any money.
When you worked there, what were you making when you worked there for 15 years?
I was getting, if you got paid, it was $50, but then taxes got taken out. It was about $46, 24 cents a week. I got, when I left.
Wait, how much?
$46 and 26 cents a week, or 24 cents a week. I can't remember. FICA, SDI, whatever they took out. But this is the thing. I was working 120 hours a week, every week. That was the schedule was about 110 hours a week, but we worked, sometimes we pulled all-nighters, sometimes we pulled multiple all-nighters, but either way, it averaged out about between 110, 120 hours a week that we worked. 52 weeks a year.
Where are you sleeping? You're sleeping at the place.
Now at the headquarters, they actually live right next to where they work. But at the time when I lived there, I lived just down the street from this compound.
So you didn't live at the compound?
I didn't live at the compound. I was restricted to the property, not allowed to leave the property, which was probably for a year out of those 15 years. I slept under my desk or in a closet or something like that.
Oh, so you were not confined to have to live on the property. You did live off the property.
I did. And
so you had a car, you could go around, you can do your things?
I had a motorcycle, but most of the time I just walked back and forth.
Okay. Because you hear some stories about, you're confined, you cannot leave, you have to watch the only TV that they're playing over there, and they edit the videos and all this other stuff.
Absolutely.
But you actually lived off of campus.
But like a block away. Like
so if I'm a block
down
away,
the street.
well, let me ask you, can I date another girl? Can I go?
No.
Go to a bar? Can I have a girl come over to my
when
place?
When you get off work, the bars are already closed. They've already had last call by the time you get off.
I know some good bars. I mean, if you're in LA, I know the right bars.
Not in Gilman Hot Springs, California.
Listen,
but here you go.
Any marketplace that can sell alcohol, they make the money. But go ahead. Yeah.
When I left in 2005, from 1990 to 2005, I got my Social Security statement. It said for the entire 15 years that I worked there, I made a total of $29,000 for 15 years of 120 hours a week. I think I averaged it out one day between the all-nighters and all that stuff. I think it was about 30 cents an hour, 30, 35 cents an hour, which is less than slave labor in China. People that make iPhones in China are making more money than Sea Org members. And they get Sundays off. We didn't get Sundays off. We had to work 7 days a week.
You said how many $1,000 in 15 years?
$29,000 in 15 years.
Do you have this to show it?
Absolutely. I'll send it to you.
You have?
I have it, yeah.
Okay. So you made $29,000 in
I made more money in the first 3 or 4 months after I left in 2005. I made more money in that few months than I made in 15 years working for Scientology.
But how is that? So again,
here's the thing. They're getting all this money from people.
Yeah.
They're not paying anybody anything.
Yeah.
And so it's basically a cash machine. They're buying properties because they can't stockpile the money as a nonprofit. I don't know all the legalities of it, but I don't think you're allowed to hoard the money. You got to spend it. And so they buy real estate with that money. And then they renovate that real estate, and then they get that property designated a historical property. And then, so they're making money on real estate, they're making money on donations, and really, as far as I can tell, the only thing that they spend money on is legal, private investigators, and dirty tricks. That's one of their biggest budget expenses, is messing with former members to not have them tell what happened in Scientology. And here's the reason. People say that right now Scientology's got about $3 billion. And a lot of that is soft assets. If you had $3 billion, how much would you spend to keep it? $500 million on legal? That's nothing. I'd spend it to keep the $3 billion.
But how many people out there like you can say that you worked 120 hours a week for many years for $29,000, 30 cents an hour? How many people also can say what you just said? That you know of, that are out, that have left the church?
At least 100.
At least 100?
Yeah.
So here's my question. How can an organization do that, period?
Under the guise of religion. Because when
Under
you
the guise of religion, you can
Yeah.
do that with your
Absolutely.
congregation?
Yeah. You turn this whole place into a religion, you just lock the door, keep these guys here all night long. Because
Wait a minute, that's a law? That's a law?
Well, no. The state or the federal government is not allowed to interfere with a religion.
Separation of church and state.
That's right. You
Okay.
can't, a judge can't say you can't do it that way because the religious doctrines say this is how we do it. So even today, a court order was issued in a case, like a ruling was issued in a couple that they basically gave about $1 million to Scientology, and they were ripped off. They donated for things that other people were also donating. So like they said, oh, we're going to put a star on top of this building in Clearwater called the Superpower Building. Well,
It's literally called that.
There's a building in Clearwater, Florida called the Superpower Building.
Does it say it on the, does it say?
Absolutely. They call it the Superpower Building. It's got a giant...
It's actually a pretty cool name. Superpower building. Like, if I go in there, am I going to have superpowers? Is it just like
No.
X-Men and people like that are in there?
No, but you know the crazy thing is that when you leave Scientology and you speak out about it, you're called a suppressive person. And any Scientologist that runs into you, they have to run away. They can't even look at you.
You're a suppressive person.
I'm a suppressive person.
So what am I interviewing you?
You're called a PTS, a potential trouble source, because you're connected to a suppressive person. But here's the thing I wanted to tell you.
PTS, Mario.
You are PTS. Just by being connected to me right now, you're a PTS.
Now, what if I would have interviewed David Miscavige? Would I still be a PTS or no?
Well, no, you're connected to me now. That's it. We're locked.
I'm a PTS for life.
Well, unless you disconnect from me. You have to send me a formal letter saying, I can't associate with you anymore because you've committed suppressive acts. And then maybe, depending on how much money you give them, they can take you off the list of being a PTS. But this is my point about the superpowers. If I walk into a grocery store and there's 10 Scientologists there, they're going to run out of the grocery store. They can't even look at me or be near me, okay? Even if they've done superpower. So I table the question, who's really got the superpowers? I could scatter them like roaches. Anyway.
Do you ever run into these guys?
I've run into people and they literally will turn their backs and walk away. They can't even look at me. They cannot even look at me because I'm a suppressive person. And in Scientology is a snitch culture. So if there's another Scientologist in the egg aisle and I'm in the cereal aisle with the goody-goody two-shoes Scientologist, that other person, if they talk to me, that other person will write a report and say, hey, I saw Joe Blow talking to Marc Headley. And then that person will get pulled in and say, what the hell? Why were you talking to Marc Headley?
In our industry, there's a little bit of that with me as well, but that's a whole different topic. But go ahead. Okay, so you were saying that this superpower building that we have in Florida, right?
Yeah,
okay.
so they were donating, this couple was donating.
$1 million?
Yeah, well, they donated different amounts for different things, but
Right.
they said, we're going to put this cross on top of this building. Well, they told another 50 people that they were paying for the cross on the building. So they basically just oversold the same thing to get money from people.
Got it.
Anyway, long story short, a judge ruled today that if you sign an agreement with Scientology that says you're going to be, I think they call it a parishioner agreement or some sort of agreement to participate in Scientology, when you sign that, it says in there that you will be subjected to Scientology's arbitration rules. So if you want your money back, you have to do it the Scientology way. And in Scientology, it's a kangaroo court. You're a suppressive person now. You want your money back? Screw you. That's it. End of story. You're not getting your money back.
And your case doesn't withstand in the court. Like you go in there and say, hey.
Our case was a separate thing. In our case, we had different causes of action in our case, and because the FBI was investigating Scientology for human trafficking, our lawyers put all the eggs in the human trafficking basket, which was one of our causes of action. And they got rid of all the other causes of action, physical assault and false imprisonment and whatever the other causes of action were. And the FBI, who knows exactly what happened, but that case fizzled, and then our case was dismissed because there wasn't human trafficking happening there.
So who has won against them so far?
Well, they've settled a lot of cases. And I think, this would have to be verified, but I'm almost positive that any case that has actually gone to trial, Scientology's lost. So if it goes to trial, they lose.
Give me one example. Like what's gone to trial?
There was a case
big one.
involving a guy named Larry Wollersheim, and he sued the church for $30 million. And they fought it for years and years and years. And I was there in the church when they were fighting this case, and they had this slogan, "Not one thin dime for Wollersheim." And they fought it and they fought it and they fought it. And the day it was going to trial, the Scientologists gave him a check for $30 million.
They gave him, and is this public? Is this?
Yeah, yeah.
It's on public information.
He goes around telling everybody he got a lot of dimes.
He got a lot of dimes for it. So okay, let's go back a little bit. I know we'll come back to this again.
Yeah.
Why was L. Ron Hubbard so fascinating? What made him so? You see some of his interviews, the way he would speak, and the stories. I was this. I was a physicist. I used to do this. I used to be in a Marine. I was a commander. And then you do the research, and twice he had to step down and this. But why was he so fascinating that people looked at him and say, "This is a brilliant man"? Why did that happen to him?
I think he was charismatic, and I think he was full of shit. So he was a good bullshitter, and he would make up preposterous stories to impress people. And a lot of people bought into those stories. And like you said he had this many medals, and he was this, and he was that, and his childhood was this, and he was a brother of the Blackfeet Indian, all this stuff. And then when people started researching, they find out like 90% of what he said is complete bullshit. So I think he was like a circus barker. He was like a carnival barker. He was he got people riled up, and he got people excited, and he said, "This is what we're doing." And it was a time in the 50s and the 60s when there was a threat of nuclear war, and there were all the atomic bombs are going to go off, and so people wanted something to grab onto, and they wanted something to believe in. And he was saying, "We're against all that. We're going to go off and do this." And I think at that time, it was sort of, we're going to be dead, and we should try and do something. Was
that the pitch originally?
I think so, yeah. And a lot of his early lectures, he talks about atomic bombs and what the whole planet could be wiped out tomorrow. And there was always, and that's another thing in the Sea Org, which was, if we don't do the job right now, we might not get another chance. And we've got to be dedicated to the bone. We got to be dedicated because we got so much work to do, and if we don't do it, the whole planet's going to get wiped out.
So who did he convince to become a religion? I mean, whoever he sold the idea to that approved it. I mean, that's either it's brilliance, or the people who represented the government that approved it to be a religion are idiots. So which one is it?
Well, what happened was Scientology in the 60s actually got a tax-exempt religious recognition. And then a lot of the money was going to Hubbard, and they lost it for that exact reason, because he was getting the money, and you can't do that. So they lost their tax exemption. And then they fought that all the way up until 1993, and the IRS granted them tax exempt status in 1993. But what led up to that was they filed thousands and thousands of cases against individual IRS agents. They filed cases against the IRS. They were suing them everywhere and anywhere in the United States. The IRS, they were suing, Scientology was suing them. When
Scientology is suing the IRS?
Yes. The individual agents of the IRS, they had launched legal cases, thousands, I think it was like 2,000 something legal cases against the IRS that Scientology filed. When Scientology was about to get tax exemption, they had $1 billion tax bill, because they hadn't been paying taxes since they lost their tax exemption in, I think, in the 60s or the 70s. They owed $1 billion. If the IRS would not have granted them tax exemption, they would have been done. In 1993, Scientology would be no more, because they didn't have $1 billion. Okay, they went and met with the commissioner of the IRS at the time in 1993, and they basically told him, if you give us tax exemption, this all goes away. All the cases will disappear tomorrow. They'll be done. Gone. They got tax exemption. So it's not like
they bought their way into being tax exempt.
It's not like they got
tax exempt. So they paid $1 billion to get tax exempt?
No. They didn't pay the bill. They got tax exemption, and I think they settled any outstanding taxes for like $20 million, $30 million. And that was it. You're good to go.
Who approved that?
I think the commissioner's name was Fred Goldberg, I think was the commissioner of the IRS back in the 90s.
This is in the 90s when this became official. So
Yeah, it was August 1993. And now here's the craziest thing of this whole...
1993, that's 7 years after he died. So it didn't even happen while he was alive.
Nope. And he had said that certain things in Scientology couldn't happen unless they were tax exempt. So there was pockets of money, millions and millions of dollars worth of money that were parked places that could only be unlocked if they became tax exempt. These were things that L. Ron Hubbard had dictated before he passed away. But it's not like the church down the street that's having a weekly Sunday service and they're doing marriages and they're doing funerals and they're doing something for the public. And for that reason, we give them a break. Scientology is destroying families, they're busting up relationships, they're bankrupting people, they're putting money on people's credit cards illegally. They're doing all sorts of things that absolutely do not benefit the public, but they're getting that same benefit of not having to pay taxes. And because of that, that's how from 1993 to now, they go from owing $1 billion to having $3 billion in assets.
$3 billion is not a lot of money for somebody to go after them, if you really think about it.
It's not, but they're not that big. They're just not that big.
What's the biggest the church ever was? Is today the biggest it's ever been at 20,000?
I would say in the 90s, I think in the 90s they probably had, I'd say 100,000 people.
Oh, so they've dropped off tremendously.
Oh, since 1996, at the international headquarters, L. Ron Hubbard wrote this policy that all statistics have to be graphed, all. And they have thousands and thousands of statistics that they keep in Scientology. Scientology is micromanaged to the nth degree. When we worked at the property, someone would come by every day and check our graph. Every single day for every single person, they'd check your graph to make sure that you had marked it for the day. That, like hourly during a day.
That's efficiency.
Okay, it's not really, because you spend a lot of time marking your graph and there's nothing really to put on it. Anyway, but regardless, they have statistics in headquarters by years, and since 1996, Scientology statistics across the boards, membership, enrollment, new people in, OT8s, OT5, everything across the boards down. Everything since 1996. And I think the reason that is the internet.
So the internet is working against them right now.
Well, yeah, because they have this policy of disconnection. And if you were in Scientology and you got kicked out and your family didn't talk to you anymore, that was it. We never heard from you again.
So let me ask you some basic questions. You know, religion questions. So it's a religion. What does Scientology believe happens when you die?
They believe that you come back.
Reincarnation. So
Absolutely.
they believe in reincarnation.
Yeah.
Who was Scientology's God? Was there a creator?
No, and you learn about, there's policies from L. Ron, there's writings of L. Ron Hubbard where he says that Jesus is a pedophile. I mean, they don't believe in God. There's absolutely no, they say this when they try to get people in that, oh no, you can be a Buddhist, oh you can be a Christian, oh you can be a Catholic. That is 100% not true. And even some of the crimes in Scientology are mixing practices. So being a practicing Catholic and being a Scientologist, you can't do it. It's not allowed. But they teach you that you're the eighth dynamic, which is a God.
So you could be a God.
Yeah.
Now that's a very effective method that other churches also use, that if you get it to a certain level, you could be a God.
Sure. They say you are a God.
From day one, or you can be a God?
No, there is a God dynamic. They have these different dynamics, which it goes from 1 through 8.
Yeah.
And the eighth dynamic is the God dynamic.
What is God to them? Like if you define God to them, and maybe it's a different definition for a God.
I think they call it the creator or a force, a universal force.
Like you can create whatever life you want to create.
You can create planets.
You can, okay, now that's a different story. Now we're getting a little different story. But if you can create your own life and you're a God, maybe that's their interpretation, and you can be your own God. So, okay, so who created everything? Is it going back to them of Dianetics, the 3 different concepts of Dianetics, the real, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So what created the planet? What created?
That's hard to say because a lot of times L. Ron Hubbard goes into trillions and trillions of years ago, and he talks about that there's billions and billions and billions of planets.
What's the craziest thing you ever read that he said? Craziest thing?
I don't know. That's a lot.
Give me one of them. Like something where if somebody said that's just craziness. What is it that you?
You can only wash them. You can only wash windows with ammonia and water, and newspaper. Period. That's it. Windex is not allowed. Like stupid stuff. Every time you use a car, you have to wash it. No, I'm serious. L. Ron Hubbard wrote these things. Every time you use a car, you have to wash it. If you drive to the market and drive back, you got to wash your car. You can only wash windows with ammonia and water and newspapers. That's it. You cannot use Windex.
What else?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. There's so many bizarre. Like you can only use one kind of shoe polish for your boots. Like one brand. Like,
but what's the psyche behind it? What's
what L. Ron Hubbard said. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's just it's whatever way the wind was blowing that day.
So then, is it a lot of?
It's just, I'm telling you, it's just a bunch of bullshit. That's why it's hard for me to say, oh, he said this one thing.
But you know,
this dude has said so much.
But you know what it makes me think about?
Volumes of
Here's
bullshit.
what it makes me think about. It makes me think about, some of these bigger families, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. First time when he met Jackie Kennedy's brother, John F. Kennedy. When she met John F. Kennedy, he went up to John F. Kennedy and he said, "Hey, so what's your favorite color?" And John F. Kennedy's answer was, "Oh, we only wear red." He says, No, but what's your favorite color? He says, "We like red." No, what's yours? So these are some of the things you hear that are weird, but that's maybe a cultural ritual thing that they have for their family. So are these a lot of L. Ron Hubbard's rituals that were passed down to everybody?
Oh yeah, like
he would be seen as their god.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he is source. They call him source. L. Ron Hubbard is source.
Got it.
So if L. Ron Hubbard said you can only wash windows with ammonia and newspaper and water, that's it. Like you get in trouble if you get a can of Windex out and you start spraying those windows. You're going to get a report written on you.
What do they think about promiscuity?
100% against that.
Oh, really?
In the Sea Organization, if you want to have relations with a girl, you have to be married. You can't even do a test drive. You have to be married, period.
So no sex before getting married?
Yeah.
So they're firm about that?
Oh, 100%. Is
there a specific type of a condom I have to use, or is there,
no,
are they
no.
pretty
In
open
the
about
Sea
it?
Organization, they have a prison camp that's called the Rehabilitation Project Force. If you have sex with your girlfriend before you're married, you'll go to the Rehabilitation Project Force.
Because I need help?
Yeah, you need to be rehabilitated because your moral compass is out of tune. And you could spend a year to 10 years on the Rehabilitation Project Force.
I mean, what is that rehabilitation? Is it like such an exciting moment of rehabilitating with somebody?
No, you do hard labor like construction or janitorial stuff.
Oh, okay.
All day long, every day.
I'm thinking like I'm rehabilitating with another sexual partner to get it out of my system.
There's no relations while you're on the RPF, period.
None.
No,
now,
none.
you were married 13 years, though.
I've been married 26 years now.
But at the time when you were leaving, you were worried because you were worried about what's going to happen with your marriage, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't see my wife a lot when I was there. She worked actually for David Miscavige. She worked in the Religious Technology Center.
Wow.
And I worked in the production organization. So we did video and film.
So you guys are still married?
We're still married. We have 3 children.
Did your mom also leave the church?
No. I've not spoken to my mom is disconnected from me. I'm not allowed to speak to her.
She's alive?
Yeah, and my sister and my brother.
And they're still part of it?
I've not spoken to them since 2005.
What do they think of you?
They think I'm a suppressive person. My mom told her family, who's not in Scientology, she said that if she spoke to me, it would risk the future eternity for all mankind. She told her family that, who aren't in Scientology. If that she spoke to me, it would risk the future eternity for all mankind.
How comical some of this stuff it is you're saying.
But she believes that.
Your mom believes
that if she speaks to me, that all future mankind's eternity is at risk.
What do you believe in now?
I'm sort of like a karma guy, like do good things will happen to you.
So you don't believe in God? I'm curious because this experience, what has it done to your spiritual life?
It's made me very cynical in terms of that angle. So that's why I say I do have this idea that there is something greater than us,
right.
and there's some sort of force. Whether I don't say that I'm religious. I say I'm spiritual.
Do you believe there's a creator? You think there is a God?
I think there's somebody out there that's doing something. But I don't believe in organized religion.
So Buddhism may be good for you.
Yeah, sure. I've studied all sorts of things since I left, but like I said, I'm a bit skeptical, and I'm a bit sort of like, I do a double take or a second guess, a second look, because I think, I kind of did that.
Have you ever sent your mom like a Bible? Just say, Mom, I want you to read this Bible. It may change your life.
No, we saw her at a funeral a few years ago. And
she saw you?
Yeah, and that's when she said this to the family, was after that. Because she talked to my boys. I have 3 boys that she'd never met. I have 5, 10, and 12-year-old.
So what does your 12-year-old think about this whole thing? Like, do they give it a hard time when you go to school, or not really?
No,
they
don't, no one knows anything.
No one knows what's going on.
No.
Maybe in high school, maybe they'll have to explain.
But even then, you know,
no one would care.
I'm a rock star. I'm on TV. Come on.
So what other rituals do they have? What other things is there in Scientology that may be comparable to other things? You know how you said promiscuity, they don't believe in that. Well, that's across the board with religion.
L. Ron Hubbard wrote a book called The Way to Happiness. It's basically like the rewrite of the 10 Commandments.
Okay.
Don't murder, don't steal.
So same, the 10
don't
are the 10.
sleep with your neighbor, your wife's neighbor. You know, all this kind of stuff. They do Sunday services, they do marriages, but it's all under the guise of we're a religion. So they basically took the easy stuff that they could do that would make them like other religions and said, let's do all that stuff. Let's make a chapel.
I saw a model I was reading somewhere where it was almost like he was following a system of being a martyr when he was married 3 times, and he says, everybody in my family pretty much, you know, went against me because they wanted him to move and he didn't want to move. California, and his daughter said, no, that's not actually the case. It's a different story because my mom didn't want to go through it anymore. And then his first son, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., who changed his name to Wolf, or I don't know what the new name is.
Yeah.
What happened there? What happened with his family? Because a lot of times you'll hear, leaders go through what they go through, and then there's a falling out. Like when Billy Graham had a falling out with his son, Franklin Graham, everybody's like, oh my gosh, if his own son doesn't want to follow him, maybe Billy Graham is somebody that's this. If Ronald Reagan's oldest son, Ron Reagan, his biological son is against him, and he's a liberal, what is up with Ronald Reagan, right? So what do you know? Did you ever meet his son? Like, what do you know about the whole story of his kids against L. Ron Hubbard?
I've never met his kids. I'm very good friends with L. Ron Hubbard's granddaughter. And she escaped, I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago, from the exact same place that I worked.
How long was she there?
She was there since she was born.
How long is that?
30 years, 35 years.
Got it.
And she is the daughter of Diana Hubbard, who is the only child of L. Ron Hubbard that still is in the Sea organization.
That still is in the Sea organization?
She still works there. And she works at the international headquarters.
And so her and Diana, her mom, it's like nothing. There's no relationship at all.
Nope, because she escaped.
Wow.
So L. Ron Hubbard had other kids as well. And those kids have not spoken out.
He's had 7 kids. I think 7 is the kids he's got.
Yeah, and I think the ones that are still around, well, I don't know about the ones before. Like in Scientology, those other families and those other wives, they don't exist. Like they're not, I didn't even know about them until I got out of Scientology.
Got it.
Like I found out he was married 2 times before.
Got it.
After I left. Like what? Like in Scientology history books, they're not in them. They rewrote his history. So as far as I know, there's about 3 or 4 kids that are still around doing stuff. And I'm pretty sure that Scientology has them sort of taped up. Like they're not going to say anything.
They're not going to say anything?
No.
So how about...
and I think it has to do with bank
money?
accounts.
Yeah. So how about, is it Jenna Miscavige?
That's right. So
what happened there?
Miscavige has a very similar situation. Besides, he's only been married once.
Jenna is his niece.
Jenna is his niece, who is the daughter of his brother. And she worked at the headquarters as well. And she also escaped. And she wrote a book, and it doesn't paint her uncle very nicely. And it also, in that book, it basically talks about how he took pleasure in separating her from her mom and dad.
David did.
Yeah, David Miscavige. How he separated them pretty much every chance he got, and he took pleasure in it. That's kind of the takeaway from that book. And she didn't have that great of an upbringing just in general in that Scientology world. But his wife has been disappeared since I think 2007, And there's a lot of speculation on where she is and that sort of thing. But up until then, she was with him everywhere, and anywhere he went, his wife was by his side. When I worked at the property, if he showed up in your area, 9 times out of 10, she'd be with him. And she was his assistant. He's chairman of the board, COB, and she was COB assistant. And anytime he came to your area or did an inspection, she was with him. So for her to be not with him, that's a little suspicious. His brother escaped from the church. David's brother, Ron Jr. escaped from the church.
Ron was just on Joe Rogan. Is that
That's
a different?
Ron Sr. That's his dad.
Oh, that's right. That's his dad that was on Joe Rogan.
His dad recently escaped.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have anything good to say about David.
His own dad.
His own dad. And I knew Ron very well when I worked at the property.
His dad.
Yeah, because I was over the production areas, and he was a musician. And he was like a score composer musician in the at Golden Era Productions. And I knew him very well. And it was kind of weird to see Dave Miscavige show up to an area and to hear his dad say, yes, sir, no, sir. Like his dad had to call him sir. Yeah. So, I'm telling you, Dave Miscavige has the property's about 500 acres, and I'd say David Miscavige's ego just barely fits there. I mean,
who's he like? What's his personality like? Because there's not a lot of stuff to read up on this guy. By the way, I've been given the introductory video when somebody wants to introduce Scientology to you multiple times. It's a DVD,
Yeah.
you put it in, you watch
and
it.
it's a video of him.
It's him speaking, his hands are like this.
At the Celebrity Center.
Yeah, at the Celebrity Center. So I've seen,
Yeah.
and by the way, I've seen that multiple times, and I've listened to the story, the pitch, the presentation. But like you said, Koppel, the last time the interview was done 24 years ago, there's really not a lot of stuff on him. So
No.
is that intentional?
Absolutely.
So what's the reason why it's intentional?
Because he is above that.
Got it. So
I'll give you a good example. When they did that interview with Ted Koppel, it won an Emmy, that show. Ted Koppel got an Emmy. David Miscavige didn't get an Emmy. They made an Emmy for him. Like they made a replica Emmy and gave it to David Miscavige because he's really the one that earned the Emmy. When David Miscavige went to a party, I think it was like Oprah, or it was like a Missy Elliott birthday party. I don't know, something. John Travolta was there, Oprah, Bill Clinton was there. When he came back to the property, somebody said, Sir, is it true that you met Bill Clinton? David Miscavige said, no. He met me. That's David Miscavige. He's hardcore. I mean, from the 15 years that I worked there, he was pretty much, I'd say 99% of the time, he was a prick. And every once in a while, like on rare occasions, when you'd be with him, he'd just be a d. He was pretty hardcore. We'd be in meetings, and he would punch people in the meeting. Like while they're sitting.
You say things like that. That's so hard to believe, though.
No, I'm telling you, dude. I've seen it so many times that we would get called, and that's the other thing. Dude loves to have meetings. So we're having meetings all the time. So, like, you're in the production area. Like, I was over a lot of people, and you're trying to get work done. You can't be sitting in meetings 5, 6, 7 hour meetings. Oh, yeah. We got all the time in the world, folks. Nobody's going anywhere.
120 hours a week you're working.
Yeah, you could do a 10-hour meeting. They squeeze that in, no problem. There was a time period in the early 2000s when you would go to a meeting, and there's gonna be one beatdown for sure. There could be multiple beatdowns in a meeting, in a single meeting. And because I was over a bunch of different production areas, so sometimes I'd have to go to like 3 or 4 meetings in a row. So I would be at one meeting, and in my book I compare it, it's called Blown for Good Behind the Iron Curtain of Scientology. Because when I got out, that was the only thing I could find that was like that, where, oh no, it's all wonderful, everything's wonderful here. And there's propaganda, and there's a whole organization made to shoot propaganda films. But when you're there, you're fearing for your life. You're thinking, today could be my number could be today. I could get a beatdown in this meeting.
No one got killed, though.
No one got killed, but if you go to a meeting,
you say fear for your life,
and you're fear for my safety.
Oh, for safety.
You're not allowed to hit back. Okay, like it's one thing if you want to go toe to toe with me and I got a fighting chance. Like I'm pretty stocky. I can use my weight. Okay, but if I can't hit you back, what am I going to do?
It reminds me of the interview with Michael Francisi when he said, you cannot hit a made man, right? You cannot hit a made man. It's similar fundamentals of the Italian mafia.
Yeah.
You can't raise your hand on a made
so
man.
That was why I pretty much knew when that one time when he punched me, and then I was like, and he said, did you see that? That guy was hitting me back. I thought at that point,
Game over.
What
Was
am I
that
gonna
in
do?
03?
The Pope of Scientology. I think it was. I want to say it was 2003, 2004.
So you're already on your way. You're almost
Pope
on your
of
way out.
Scientology just gave me a beat down, and I, if left to my own devices, would have fought back. I don't know how much of a future I've got here at this point, because now he knows that I'm unstable. I'm an unknown commodity, so to speak. But either way, he had an assistant that would, when his wife was there, but then he also had another assistant, was called his communicator. And she had Band-Aids in a little fanny pack for people that would get bloody from him giving beatdowns. So like somebody would get punched, and then there would be, and this is the thing. Now here's the craziness. You're sitting in a meeting, a conference room table with people around it. And people are getting choked and punched and shoved up against walls, and then they're getting a little cut. And they're not getting out of their seats. They're sitting there. There's more meeting to go. And then it's like, hey, and then it's like, it's not he's not even saying get that person a beating. He's just like, hey. And the assistant's like, yes, sir. Gets a Band-Aid, gives it to the person. And that person's or someone's helping them put a Band-Aid on. You cannot, that's the thing, you cannot make this shit up, okay? This is from multiple people. There's Jefferson Hawkins as a person who was at the international base. He's the one who created those Dynetics volcano commercials. That's the guy who made those. He wrote a book called Counterfeit Dreams. There's another girl that was in the international management. Her name is Amy Scobie. She wrote a book called Abuse at the Top. Ron Miscavige wrote a book. My book is out there. There's people that worked at that place, and if you read my book and then you read Amy's book and you read Jeff's book, you'd be like, okay, exact same story, different perspective, different person, different areas they worked in, but the overriding message is that David Miscavige micromanages the hell out of Scientology, and that he's abusive, he's got a temper, a huge temper, he's got a giant ego. And when you're at that property, you don't mess with him. If he says jump, you say how high.
Is there a replacement coming up anytime soon?
No,
Or he'll be
no
going
way.
for a while?
All the people that are under him, he has beat them or told all their deepest, darkest secrets to each other. Like when I was there, they created this thing called the Hole. And it was the International Management Building is 2 double-wide trailers, and all of the executives in Scientology are locked in those 2 trailers. They're not allowed to leave. They sleep there, they eat there, they do everything there. Once a day, they're marched down to a facility that has some showers, and they can take a shower, and then they're marched right back up there. And all they did all day long was have seances and confess crimes. All day long. He said, you guys are in here until you confess all your crimes, and no one leaves until you do that. I left in 2004. I talked to a girl who left in, I want to say 2010. They were still in there. They were still confessing their crimes. So if you worked in a group of 10 people and you were the boss, and all of these 9 people under you were all confessing their crimes to each other, like the horriblest things they did that destroyed Scientology or screwed up a whole plan or program here or there. When you leave, who's going to take over that? No, I know you screwed up that. No, you screwed up this. They're all. I think if David Miscavige got hit by a bus tomorrow, I think 90% of those people would just be like, I'm out.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So let me ask you a
Because
question.
they know he's gonna. That's the other thing. When you're there, you know that if you leave, they're gonna make your life miserable.
Let me ask you this.
And the only reason I left, because I knew I'd rather be dead than to be there.
Seriously, you say that?
Oh, absolutely. I contemplated just driving into a wall and just killing myself.
You're being serious?
Absolutely.
Suicide.
Death would be a better existence than living there.
When you were planning on leaving, did you and your wife have a conversation about leaving?
If you say anything to anyone,
Even your wife?
even your wife, boom, you're done.
So when you left, how much longer did your wife leave?
A few weeks. Most people there weren't allowed on the internet. Because I was over a research department and I was over a bunch of production areas, I was setting up internet stations, so I was allowed to get on the internet.
So it's 05. So 05, Facebook came out
04.
what, 04?
Yeah, this is in 03, 04. I was on the internet. I had a Hotmail account that nobody knew about.
That you use on the outside.
That I
Kind of like
used-
Hillary Clinton stuff.
I used on the side.
Yeah.
Anyway, my wife knew that I had that email account, but no one else knew that. When I left, she called her sister, who wasn't at that headquarters. It was just her sister lived in Los Angeles. And she said, hey, can you email Mark something? I got a new phone. Because after I left, they gave her a different phone, so I couldn't call her. She said, can you email Mark and give him this new number? My phone got switched and he's on a project. I just want him to know my new number. And so then over a few weeks, we orchestrated how we could get her out.
How you can get her
Yeah,
out.
and when I escaped, I drove off on a motorcycle.
Did anybody chase you or
Absolutely. They ran me off the road in the security truck.
Because I saw your cover of the book,
Yeah,
Blown for Good.
that
It
was
shows a
them
motorcycle with
chasing
two
me.
cars behind you.
Yeah, right after that picture, they drove me off the road. And when they drove me off the road in the security SUV, somebody called 911. And that person saved my life. Because if the cops wouldn't have shown up, I would have gotten right back.
Are you still in contact with that person that saved your life?
No, I never knew who it was. It was an anonymous caller called 911.
Got it.
But the police, by the time, because the Scientology guys, they have a scanner. So as soon as they heard that the police were coming to sort this out, they left. And the cops pulled me over. They said, what the hell? They knew what the hell before they got there. As soon as they saw where my address was, they said, oh, he lives at the property. And that cop called for backup, and they escorted me into the town away from the property. Because the town is about 15 minutes from where, it's in the middle of the desert, the compound. So if you escape on foot, 9 times out of 10, they catch you. They just get you and bring you back.
What do you mean they catch you? Like, who's chasing you down?
They have a drill. When someone leaves, it's called a blow.
Blow, yeah.
Okay? So someone who's left is referred to as blown, or so-and-so blew. They have a drill there at the property called the blow drill. So if somebody escapes, there's about 50, 60 people that snap into action. They call hotels, they go on the internet, they look up your credit card account to see where your last charges were. Here, this will blow your mind. They have people that work for Verizon, Sprint, AT&T. If you have a sister or a brother or whatever that's got a phone account, they will tap into their phone account and see if you called them.
Come on.
When I got my dossier, a guy that escaped from the Scientology compound, he had my dossier from the Office of Special Affairs. They have all the phone calls I made for months. Who I called, how long, and how long the conversation was. I'm telling you, you go like, oh, they're just like other religions. Really? You think so?
So what do you foresee taking place with Scientology? If you know this much that you know, and you're on Leah Remini and you're doing all the things that you're doing,
Well,
what do
here's
you
the thing.
foresee taking place?
I don't think I can talk enough about it. Because if I do this show with you and one person gets saved from not getting into it, or one person whose daughter is dabbling with it, it manages to get them out, it's totally worth it. 100%.
You're a crusader of wanting to stop everybody and anybody from getting involved.
I spent 15 years in that hellhole. If I can make it so anybody doesn't have to spend a day in that, then it's worth it to me. It's worth it. But yeah, back to the blow drill. These people are activated and they will find you. They found me when I left. They found my wife. When my wife escaped, she got on a Greyhound bus in Riverside. And I told her to go a totally different way so they wouldn't know where she was going. I told her to turn off her phone so they wouldn't be able to track the GPS. When she got to wherever it was, the misdirection, when she got there, she didn't know how to use a phone card because we grew up in this bubble.
Wow.
So she went to go make a phone call and it only took phone cards. It didn't take coins. She didn't know how to call. She didn't know how to get a phone card. She didn't even know how to call me there's no way to do it. She turned on her phone. When she got to Vegas, they were waiting for her at the bus station. When she got off the bus, there was 2 people from the international headquarters standing there waiting for her.
Were you there as well?
No, I was in Kansas City.
So what happened when she got there?
She sat down in the middle of the bus station, and this is all in my book. It's actually pretty crazy. She sat down in the middle of the bus station and told them if they touched her, she would scream. And so they watched her sit in the bus station, and when her bus came, they watched her get up and get on the bus and go. And while that was happening, they called me. And I didn't know how did they even have my number?
New number you have.
I totally knew phone, knew everything. They just called me. Shh. Hey, we got Claire. We got your wife. She's not coming. And I'm literally losing my mind on the other end because I thought I had planned it out pretty good. And then about an hour later, she called me and she said, no, they didn't get me. I'm on the bus. I'm coming. That's a light story. On this season of the Aftermath, there is an escape story that is unbelievable. When you hear, you got to watch. When you watch and you hear how this girl escaped, and this is a girl that escaped, I want to say like 2 years ago. So Scientologists say this never happened. No one has to escape. If somebody wants, they can just walk right out the door. No. This girl escaped in the most insane way that you could possibly believe, like that you would see in a movie. And there was another couple that tried to escape, and they were intercepted, that this girl knew and talked about.
What is Leah Remini's purpose of doing what she's doing right now? What is her outcome? Because, she was on Howard Stern.
Oh, yeah.
And on Howard Stern, she said, look, this works. Just leave me alone. If it works, it works. Leave me alone. And then she turned into wanting to step away. What is her reasoning to get to this point? Like, listen, there are people that leave the church, and they just go about their business. But she's in Hollywood, and she's in Hollywood going against and coming out with something like this and wins an Emmy. What was her motivation to have the tipping point of saying, screw it, I don't care if I lose friends, I don't care what happens, I have to go out there and tell this story? What happened to her?
Well, I think she would best answer that, but from what I've been able to ascertain, she saw a glimpse of what happens behind the scenes. So she was friends with Shelley Miscavige. They would trade cards and gifts and Christmas and all that stuff. They were basically they were friends, as friends as you could be with Shelley Miscavige and her being a Scientology celebrity. And when Shelley was disappeared and just vanished, and suddenly birthday cards aren't getting answered and notes aren't getting answered, she was writing to Shelley.
What happened to Shelley?
Shelley was David Miscavige's wife, and she was basically, according to people that were there, she did some stuff that Dave didn't like, and so he was like, you're done. You're out of here. And he shipped her off. The place where she's most likely at or has most likely been at is a facility called the Church of Spiritual Technology, which is a secret compound up in the mountains near Big Bear and Lake Arrowhead. At that property, they put all of L. Ron Hubbard's writings, they etch them into metal plates, and they put all of his recordings onto golden records, and they seal them in titanium capsules, and they dig vaults into sides of mountains that are nuclear proof, and they store all these writings because they believe when the whole place is blown up and obliterated that it's going to be like someone's going to find these.
You're thinking she's over there right now.
That's where she is, because there's only about maybe 10 or 15 people that work at that facility.
How public was she? Like, when David was up, was she public in the videos and the talks?
Absolutely. If he was at an event, she was standing right by his
side. And she's
side.
no longer there for how long?
Since 2007.
So you think that may be one of the reasons why she decided to come out and go against it?
No, she's not against him. She just screwed something up and he got pissed at her.
No, not Shell. I'm talking about
Leah.
Leah. I'm talking about Leah.
So Leah was at a wedding. She was at Tom Cruise's wedding to Katie Holmes. And David Miscavige was the best man in their wedding. Where's Shelley? She wasn't there. Scientology billed it as the wedding of the century, Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes. David Miscavige's wife's not here. She didn't come. She didn't get an invite. I don't think so. And Leah was like, and she asked, where's Shelley? That's what happened. She asked, where's Shelley? And then she got in trouble, and she had to go get interrogations and this thing called sect checking, which is where you have to basically confess whatever crimes you have against Scientology and against David Miscavige. And she got a little taste of what happens in the real Scientology. So most of your Grant Cardones and your Bob Duggan, these big millionaire guys that give money to Scientology, they don't see any of this. And I'm pretty sure that if they did see it, that might give them a reason to go like, whoa, hold on a second. But when you're a Scientologist, you're trained to, as soon as somebody starts talking bad about Scientology, that's it. That's it. You block it. You just go, nope, no, I'm not hearing it. Like you shut it off. You cannot hear anything bad about Scientology. And that's really how they continue on, is this policy of disconnection. That disconnection is the control mechanism that they use to keep people in Scientology. Because if there's more ex-Scientologists than there are current Scientologists.
Of course, if it's 100,000 to 20, that's
Yeah.
80,000 that are no
Right
longer
there.
part of it. Yeah.
So if they heard what those people had to say about what happened to them,
Yeah.
then most people would be like, I don't think so. I'm out of here.
So let me ask you this other question. So you've had dealings with, I'm assuming you've had dealings with probably Cardone and Cruz. You've had some dealings with some
Yeah.
of these guys.
Yeah.
What was your dealing like with Tom Cruise?
When I was at the international headquarters, he needed to audit somebody.
Yeah.
And most of the people there had been in Scientology for a long time and had done Scientology courses and counseling outside of, before they got into the Sea Org. Well, I got into the Sea Org when I was 16, so I didn't do anything. I haven't even read Dianetics to this day. And so he needed somebody to basically be like a guinea pig for him to practice on. And
Tom.
yeah, and I was that person. So he did all sorts of Scientology processing on
How
me.
was Tom like when you dealt with Tom?
He's a great guy. He's a little like over the top. Like he's always the double handshake guy.
Yeah.
He's the, do you need anything? Do you need a water? Do you need a this? Do you need a that? Do you need a, you sure? Everything good? That's Tom. And that was in.
So a cool guy.
That was in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was kind of a newbie in Scientology at that time.
He had said that he'd been in it for a while, though.
Well, he wasn't doing anything, though.
Right.
He was just a Scientologist. He wasn't doing anything. When you're at the international headquarters and you're doing courses, now you can call yourself a Scientologist.
Got it.
He was with Nicole Kidman at that time, and I don't even think they were married at that time. And she was at the property too. She was doing courses in the same room with him. Where he was doing the counseling with me, she was right there doing courses. She was doing the PTS SP course, which is where you learn about potential trouble source and suppressive people.
So she was studying
She
about
was doing
me,
that
like
course
what a
right.
PTS would be.
She was doing that course 10 feet from where we were doing the counseling, and so was Kirstie Alley. They had Kirstie Alley there as a prop, because you can't set up like a little super exclusive course room for Scientology celebrities and them be the only two celebrities. So they threw Kirstie in there as a prop, and she's doing something that was totally 100% useless. Anyway. But they weren't even married yet. And at the time, he was shooting, I think he just finished shooting Days of Thunder. He had like the longish kind of hair.
A lot of people say it's not a good movie. I
Hey.
watched that 50 times in the Army.
When I was there, I think I was like 17, 18.
So to you, it's Tom Cruise.
Come on.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I thought this guy, and that's what I remember. I'm going to get to hang out with Tom Cruise for a few months. Anyway, fast forward to the next time I saw him was in 2004.
14 years later.
Yeah. He came to the property and he arrived in a helicopter. He was whisked in, he did whatever he did, and he left. I think he did a lot of research for films, Mission Impossible films and stuff like that. He did at the property. And there was a huge library we had in the castle where we did all the film shooting, and he basically had free run of the whole place. Anyway, he was at the property and getting toured around. We had just built a ton of stuff, editing, post-production bays, online bays, all these Avid edit bays, all this cool stuff. And he was getting a tour, and I was in one of the areas when he was walking through, and he was like, Mark, and I was like, oh. And
So even then, he was chill with you. He was
chill, but at that time, he was a totally different dude.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. He was hardcore.
In too deep with David.
Yeah, and at the time, Dave would tell us, I just told Tom that I beat the shit out of all you guys, and he said if I need it, he'll come over here and he'll f***ing beat the shit out of you guys. And he was basically, so at that point, Tom knew what was going on. Dave was telling Tom what he was doing.
Is that a conspiracy when David told Tom that you got to leave Nicole Kidman? Like that whole thing, is that just a story, okay, so you don't know enough to comment on that one?
Well, I'll tell you what we knew at the property.
Right.
Fact, fiction, I don't know, because it was all what we were told. It was kind of like if Dave Miscavige says that Nicole Kidman is sleeping with Ewan McGregor and she's pregnant, even though Tom is sterile, then she's an SP. That's what we were told. So That was the rumor that was going around the base, was that Tom and Nicole both had assistants. And both of those assistants were Scientologists. And both of those assistants reported up to the church on every move they made. Through that information, it was ascertained that Nicole had cheated on Tom because she was pregnant. And as far as everyone knew, including Tom, he was unable to have kids. So that she was pregnant meant that she was sleeping around. So that's what we were told. I wasn't there, I wasn't in the bedroom, I have no idea what happened. But Marty Rathbun, who had since left, did many interviews where he said that he was tasked with getting Tom back in to the fold. That was one of the things that they used to basically get him back in, was that.
So it may have never happened, it may have been a conspiracy, because obviously he ended up having kids afterwards. Right, okay.
But either way,
sure.
When he divorced her, he was back in hardcore. And that was I think that was in the early 2000s or late 90s.
So I read about the fact that L. Ron Hubbard in the 70s, he just kind of said, I'm going to go live on a ship he pretty much lived on a ship for like a decade or something like that in the 70s with some friends, and it would come and they go, and a lot of his philosophies got clear on this ship, apparently.
Yeah. That's where the Sea Org was started. In 1965,
right.
He was being basically hunted by different governments, and he had to find a place to go where they couldn't get him, and that ended up being in the ocean.
Is this also documented, by the way?
Absolutely.
Because I know there was a lot of countries he couldn't even go park, he couldn't even go.
They couldn't even dock the boat
dock the ship. So no. This is factual that these events.
I'm pretty sure.
There was 6 countries that he couldn't go to.
I was going to say, there's a certain thing where I think in certain countries his passport was not valid there. Like he could not travel to that country.
And then after that is when he decided to come back, and he calls it the Sea Org, and that's a lot of the inspiration came from that ship.
Yeah, so that's where he wrote a lot of the counseling procedures, and a lot of the courses were all written in that 1960s, very early 70s period was when a lot of these things were tested on people,
right,
and then codified, and then he would write it, and then they would send that out to different Scientology organizations. In the 70s, the Sea Organization moved to land. And when they moved to land, they eventually ended up in Clearwater. And the Clearwater, that giant facility in Clearwater, is called the Flag Land Base. Because the flagship is the ship that controls all the other ships. So when he landed in Clearwater, that's where Flag ended up, and now we're on land. It's called the Flag Land Base, and to this day, it's called the Flag Land Base.
Same thing.
Yeah, it's just not.
Got it.
And that's what I'm saying. When L. Ron Hubbard says it's the Flag Land Base, it's the Flag Land Base.
Right.
So it's never going to change to anything else because he's not writing any new stuff.
I thought it was interesting that he went away and he did a lot of his writing to put the system together. It's almost as if he put the playbook together on how to grow the church. But by the way, what were some of the bigger names in the 70s that were part of the church? Was there any celebrities in the 70s?
Sure, you got like Stanley Clarke, who was a famous jazz musician.
Right.
Chick Corea. There was a guy, when I went to a Scientology school in Los Angeles, there was this guy, Brody. He was like a football player. John Brody, I think was his name. John Travolta was a big 70s, 80s.
Oh, so John Travolta goes back to the 70s, 80s time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, got it. So the Ted Koppel interview, there was some controversy within the Scientology church because apparently when you go to a certain level, that's when the name Xenu comes up.
Yeah, in OT3, I think, is where they first talk about Xenu, who's this intergalactic overlord.
Right.
And you learn about these little aliens that are attached to you. You have thousands and thousands of these little aliens attached to you.
I have aliens attached to me.
Everybody does, especially you. And anyway, so
I have Middle Eastern aliens, Mario.
You're from Iran?
From Iran.
Iranian aliens attached to you. And you have to do these OT levels, and that's where you basically kick them out. You evict them one by one. And it takes forever because there's so many of them. And it could take you 10 years to evict all these guys. Well, Xenu is the guy who made all those aliens. He took thetans, or beings, from other planets, and he dumped them in some volcanoes on Earth. And that's how he created all these aliens that attach to bodies. Okay. When they did the Ted Koppel interview, they showed that whole story of Xenu. Because this is written. There's L. Ron Hubbard lectures you can listen to on the internet where he tells the entire story. It's not made up. This is what they believe. There was a South Park episode that detailed this entire, what Scientologists believe, and they told the whole Xenu story on that episode.
Are you ready to hear the truth?
I guess.
The genius of South Park.
Right? And I watched the episode when I first left. Okay, so when you're in Scientology, they believe that if you hear about this story
Of Xenu.
before you get to that level, then you will die of pneumonia. Because that's the way that trap has been built, is that if you gain this information before you're ready to receive it, then you will basically self-destruct. Okay, so in Scientology, it is a suppressive act. So if you've done OT3, you're not allowed to tell anyone about Xenu. Even if somebody's already done OT3, you still can't even tell them about Xenu. You can't tell anybody about Xenu, period. And because of this thing, you're going to kill them. So in the Ted Koppel interview on Nightline, they told the whole Xenu story.
He did or they did? Ted did?
No, they did a whole piece on it. Like they had a prepared piece.
Okay, got it.
And so they didn't tell Dave they were going to do it either. They totally surprised. It was like, hello, gotcha. What about this? And then Dave, they say, what about that? And then Dave says some spin like, that's some random lecture that L. Ron Hubbard get. No, that's like the big, that's like an origin story in Scientology. Like this is a big belief precept of Scientology is this thing about the aliens. And you learn as you go. There's all sorts of other things. You learn, and basically, when I was talking about the bait and switch earlier, this is another one of these bait and switches. Because on OT3, you find about all these aliens. And then on OT7, you have to get rid of all the aliens. And then on OT8, you find out you created the aliens. They were never there. You created them.
I created the aliens.
You created the aliens.
Is this like a...
Because you're a god. That's where you learn on OT8, you're a god. And you created the aliens as a game or as a task for yourself to be able to get rid of them. And anything that you did that was aberrated came from the aliens. So when you cheated on your wife, that was one of the aliens that made you cheat on your wife.
I mean, this would make half the men in the world happy.
Right?
If they could blame an alien.
I've got aliens. That's why my gambling.
I don't have demons. I have aliens.
The aliens want to go to Vegas. I want to stay here with you, honey.
Babe, I love you. Wow. So Xenu was a big contradiction. Because I read a lot about that interview with Ted Koppel. Created a lot of controversy that from there on it was kind of like, let's not even start addressing it because it's better off we no longer do interview. That's why I asked you earlier, why hasn't he been on TV?
Well,
since
now,
then? Yeah.
Now he's at the property, when I left in 2005, he was paranoid that he thought people there were trying to poison him.
Poison him?
Yeah.
So let me take it on a different side. So you think the church is going to collapse once David is no longer involved? That's what you think is going to happen?
Unless enough people speak out. Like, I'm one person. There's hundreds, maybe even thousands of people that have similar stories to mine. If those people would speak out as well, then it would probably speed it up. And it might even collapse before David Miscavige gets hit by a bus or whatever happens to him.
You think one of the reasons why some people have such a strong emotional connection to the Scientology church is because, like I can tell you from personal experience with friends, I had an office of mine, Granada Hills, right? We were in Granada Hills, and we probably work with 50, 100 Scientologists in our office. And one thing I can tell you, my experiences with them, if I tell you it's 90% positive, it's probably an understatement. I had a great experience working with these guys.
And those guys are not exposed to any of the things that I've talked to you about.
I mean, I could tell you they worked. They were workers.
Yeah.
They'd be out there running an appointment. They didn't have a problem driving 6 hours to an appointment, an hour, nothing. They were workers, hardcore workers. And I remember how many friends that I had a couple friends that were going through trying to overcome heroin and ecstasy and addiction to Vicodin. Vicodin was the hardest one out of all of them, even harder than heroin. And hey, why don't you try Scientology's methods called Narconon or something like that.
Narconon.
Narconon, yeah. And send them there because the system that L. Ron Hubbard came out himself with from his own research that he did, this helps people, overcome a drug addiction. And the amount of testimonies I heard, it's a lot of positive testimonies. That I mean, obviously there's 3 people that died that they went through because
Exactly.
I've read that as well. I'm going to give both. But,
If 100 people get off drugs and 3 end up dying, the FDA wouldn't approve that drug, I don't think.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. But did you yourself, while you were there, or even after you left, did you also see yourself positive experiences on the way they handled people that got off drugs and then they stayed off of drugs? Because when somebody's on drugs, I'm with Robert Shapiro. Robert Shapiro was the Dream Team, O.J. Simpson's attorney.
Yep.
And he lost his son, Brent Shapiro. He started a foundation called Brent Shapiro. And he said there's this notion that people who are on drugs, they're in control. He says they will lie to you and say anything to you to convince you that they're okay. And they're not, because psychologically they're gone, right? So here's a person that's hostage with the drugs and they don't know how to stop their addiction. And I find a church called Scientology that helps me get off of something that I've had no control over. No organization's been able to fix this, no government organization, nothing's been able to fix it. I'm off of it. I'm going to give my life to this. Do you think there's a part of it where my loyalty is to it because you were able to help me get off drugs? Do you think there's some of that going on?
I'd say that there are probably some people out there, like I know Kirstie Alley, for instance, was a drug addict, and she got off drugs through the Narconon program. That's how she's such a dedicated Scientologist, I think. I happen to know, because before I worked at the international headquarters, I worked at the parent organization that was over Narconon. And I happen to know 100% that the entire Narconon drug rehabilitation program is just Scientology courses. There was nothing developed for Narconon.
Meaning
There's a thing in Scientology called the Purification Rundown. Before you're allowed to do anything in Scientology, whether you've done drugs, whether you're an addict, whether you got some Novocaine from the dentist, doesn't matter. Every single person that goes into Scientology, the first thing they have to do is called the Purification Rundown. And you sit in a sauna 5 hours a day, and you take a whole bunch of vitamins, and you sweat out all the drugs, supposedly. That's how it works. That's what L. Ron Hubbard said. That's exactly what Narconon is. It's that with all the Scientology taken out of it. They do the exact same thing. It wasn't like we said, oh, let's develop and research a program that gets people off drugs.
Was it effective, though? Was it?
No, it's totally not effective.
So you're saying it's not even effective?
No, you could read testimonies from people that worked at Narconon. The people that work at Narconon, a lot of times, they recruit them to work at Narconon. After they do the program, they say, hey, you know what? We got you off drugs. Why don't you stay here and help more people get off drugs? Most people are like, well, that's great, because I'm not going to be able to get a job pretty much anywhere outside of here. And then they start working there, and then they start trading drugs for sex with the students. Students are dying. Students are ODing. When their money runs out, the insurance runs out, they just dump them on the corner, and they say, you're out. There's no more money. Your parents aren't paying. You're done. You're out of here. So for whatever good that Narconon does, the bad, I assure you, far outweighs it.
You believe that?
Oh, 100%. I know. They have in Narconon, they say, in Scientology, they say they have a 76% success rate. That's what they say. Mm-hmm. They claim that, 100%. In publications, in their website, in pamphlets, they say we have a 76% success rate. If you go to any drug rehab program in the world, they're going to say, impossible. That is 100% impossible. There's no way that's possible. The best, most effective drug rehabilitation programs usually have like a 20 to 30% success rate. Maximum.
Interesting.
Like the ones that are scientifically, they've studied the people that have left. This 76% success rate is just like Scientology's enrollment figures or their member figures. If you ask Scientology, how many members do you have? They say 15 million, 17 million, 20 million, 10 million. There was a time, and there's videos on the internet where public relations people that worked for Scientology will tell you that over the years, they would say, hey, we have 5 million members. And then they'd do a newspaper article a year later, and somebody would say, how many members do you have? And they say, what did we say last time? I said, we said 5 million. Okay, we have 6.5 million members. And over the years, they just kept the figure going. They don't. I was working at the international headquarters. We were tracking all this stuff. They don't have those people.
When you say 20,000 members, you said the number 20 to 30,000 members. Is that, how are you measuring the 20 to 30,000? How many are paying today?
That's right. That's people that
so
are
you're measuring
doing
how many are
Scientology services and that are active in Scientology.
Got it.
So the way Scientology counts
versus if I once took a class and I attended, that total is about 5 million.
That's right.
That's still a big number. So 5 million people have taken their courses?
Well, or watched a film. So like
okay.
they'll do a thing on Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles where they pass out movie tickets. They say, hey, you want to watch a free film? Right down the street from Man Chinese. And you walk in there and you watch a film. You're on that list. You're one of those members.
Okay.
You watch a 30-minute film.
Yeah.
You're a member.
I'd be curious to know how they measure that number. So last but not least, this last question here to wrap up before we finish off with the book. So what do you do now? So you've been part of the church, you were there, you worked, you did your part, you left. You were telling me earlier you were trying to buy a car, you had zero credit, nothing on your name, nothing going on, and you bought this car from Galpin Ford, which is a place I bought 3 cars from off of Roscoe.
Yeah.
A guy named Jaime Godina sold me the car. And
right off the 405.
Right off the 405. I had a friend I was dating at that time, but so I know that Roscoe and Bassett area very well. So going back to it, what do you do now? I mean, I know you run businesses as well. You've done millions of dollars and revenues as well. So tell me about your business life today.
When I left in 2005, I had nothing. My wife also, as well, no high school diploma, we didn't do college, nothing. I worked in the film industry in Hollywood for a little bit, doing post-production, visual effects stuff. And then in 2007, I created an audiovisual systems integration company. And that company is going strong to this day. And we basically design and install audiovisual systems for museums. So
it's a niche.
Yeah, we've worked on
around the world, or is it mainly in the States?
We've done a lot of work in the States so far. We do have some projects coming up in other countries, but we've done 3 presidential libraries. We do a lot of music libraries. We do museums all over the United States. And then I also have another company that my wife runs, which is a bookkeeping company. So she has basically staff all over the United States, and they do remote bookkeeping. So this was when I was doing a lot of computer systems and we could remote in. I thought, we should have a thing. We could do remote bookkeeping so you don't have to have a bookkeeper.
So you do millions per year?
It depends on the year, but my wife and I, we have a competition.
You've done well for yourself financially.
We have done well. When I left Scientology in the first 3 months that I was gone, I made more in those first 3 months than I made in 15 years. And that's when I realized I could make a lot more.
Here's a crazy question for you. How much of your current work ethic is stemmed from your years with Scientology?
Well, I was working 120 hours a week.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
so I'm built for stamina.
So do you see why I'm asking that question? Because I lived in Iran, and when I lived in Iran, I would say, oh my gosh, we were bombed, we were this, I was so paranoid because any day you could die, and then I went to the military. We're working 100 hours a week in the military. This is crazy. We're making no money. But then that's made me a couple $100 million, right? So,
but you also, right now, your life is a paradise.
Oh, heaven on earth.
That's right.
Every day.
That's how mine is.
Right.
If I work, like when I first left at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I was like,
but
what am I going to do? I'm ready to go until midnight. I was working till 1 or 8, midnight or 1 a.m.
And you learned that
for
at
15
Scientology's
years.
craziness when they work.
I didn't learn it. I was a slave.
I get it. I fully get that.
So I'm programmed to work. And also, there's a policy that they have there, which is, if you have a problem, solve it. Like you can't say to your senior, I have a problem.
What other principles you learned that helped you in your career? Because I'm telling you, the stuff that they would tell me, the assist, the audit, the this, the that.
That's all bullshit. And from being there, I discount any of the technology, I discount.
Okay.
I don't think I learned anything from them. I think the lessons I learned from being there are what I learned. Like I put up with so much of David Miscavige's bullshit that when I was working and I didn't have my own company, there wasn't a boss that I worked for that I was like, come on. This is like my boss came to me when I first left. My boss said, "Hey, would you mind staying till 8 tonight?" And I'm thinking to myself, it's like 5 o'clock. I'm thinking like, I could stay till 8.
Did you say he's going to punch me in the face at all?
No.
Were you thinking that?
But that's the thing. It's like if you ask a regular person, can you stay till 8? That's a big ask.
Yeah, we get it here all the time.
Yeah,
Believe me,
but,
it's crisis.
But even one time they said, in order to make a deadline, we had to get a show edited and to the channel, and it had to air, and we had to get all these effects cut into the show, and there's no way to get it done unless we pulled an all-nighter. And I was the only one who could get all the stuff together and get it, and I pulled an all-nighter, and I was like, dude, you were the most awesome guy ever in the world because you stayed all night. And I'm like, dude, I was pulling an all-nighter maybe once or twice a week for the last 15 years.
Crazy question. You think if you didn't have that experience there, you'd be making the kind of money you're making today?
I don't think so.
Okay. So interesting. By the way, I appreciate the answer.
Well, yeah, but because also the obstacles that we had when I was there was, and for a lot of the time that I worked there, I dabbled in audiovisual systems. Even though it wasn't my assigned
You were making
post.
that's right. You
I
were
was
making
designing
videos, yes.
or I was saying, oh, we should use this, we should use that.
Yes.
And then right before I left, that was my actual official post.
Interesting.
But so I had what now I spend maybe a year or two planning and designing and going through with the architects and all. I did that in a week.
Yeah,
and it was always messed up. Because we should have been doing it a year or two when they were planning the building, not a week before we're supposed to install it.
That's right.
So everything was always, oh, there's no power here, oh, there's no conduit, all these silly things that would never have happened. So there's a rule where I think it's called the 10,000 hour rule. Mm-hmm. I got about 90,000 hours, okay? So I'm good. I know every wrong way, from being in Scientology, I know every wrong way to do everything. Business,
for you.
Systems, everything. I know the wrong way to do it.
It's made you millions. Believe me, I am not who I am if I didn't go through hell and back with my family, and if I didn't go through hell and back living in Iran, living in a refugee camp. There's no way in the world I am who I am today.
Yeah.
No way. Some of the stories I say, people don't even believe the stuff that we went through.
Yeah.
And so I asked that question because I want to know how much of it reflected off your success today, and you were transparent enough to say, yes, it did. I wouldn't be the person I am today. Here's a question for you. Say David's watching this right now.
Yeah.
Okay? He's somewhere in Clearwater.
Yeah.
No one, he's got his iPhone, he's in a bathroom, he's in his office, he's in his bed, he's by himself in his car, somewhere parked. No one knows he's watching this video. He's going to clear his history by the time he's done watching this.
Yeah.
But he's watching this right now, okay? And he's seen the show Scientology, The Aftermath. He's seen some of this. He's going to hear about it 24/7 because he's the name. He's the face, right?
Oh, no, they've created thousands and thousands of websites about us.
Sure, but here's the question. Say he has a moment and he says, okay, if there was anything Scientology Church could do to adjust and to positively continue its course of what they want to do, is there anything the church could do? And I know you have a lot of personal experience that's frustrated you. Mm-hmm. Is there anything they could do to make the church better from the internal side? On the external side, based on what you're saying, a lot of them haven't experienced it, a lot of members haven't seen it. They just kind of go to the courses. This course helped me. I found another issue I've overcome. I'm getting better. I feel better. I can't believe who I'm becoming. One day I'm going to be a great leader. I can create my own life, my own, God, all this other stuff. I'm going to be an OT8. Great. Is there anything David, who leads the entire church, could do to make Scientology an organization that's going to gain credibility and continue growing? Anything.
End the abuse and end the disconnection policy.
What's the disconnection policy?
It's where they're separating and destroying families. It's their excommunication policy.
So you're saying if they did those two things, Scientology would be a good organization. Maybe they're not a religion, but they'd be a good organization that they could do good for society.
Well, no. I think if they ended those two policies, then they wouldn't be hurting people as much. I think if they ended those two policies. And I also think that it would self-destruct if they ended those two policies.
And so whatever you tell them, they're not going to be able to do, because if they do it, it's going to self-destruct.
If they didn't disconnect people, then people would say what happened to them, and then those people would get out of Scientology, and then it would be a fast, quick demise. But right now, they're milking it for every second they can get, and trying to keep the people that are in there, and ordering interrogations, and separating mothers and sons and daughters. And I mean, when you hear these, you watch Scientology: The Aftermath on A&E. And these stories, if you can watch an episode and not cry, then you get problems.
If those things change, is the content valuable enough where it's life-changing?
If those things,
If, let's just say, those two things change, is the content valuable enough where it can last?
no. I'm telling you, L. Ron Hubbard repurposed other stuff.
But a lot of people say Tony Robbins did that. A lot of people say a lot of authors
Sure.
today did that. A lot of people
Sure.
say, and they've given their own, because, everything's written after the Bible. If you take the Bible, a lot of the principles come from Proverbs. Well, prior to that, if you go back and look at Sun Tzu and what he wrote, if you go back and study Confucius, if you go, so a lot of that's been said a lot of times with
Yeah.
every single religion and book and all that. You wrote a book, your book copied this other book, and this financial book copied this.
Well, in Scientology, you can't do Scientology part way. You're either in it or you're not. And the first policy letter that you read in Scientology is called Keeping Scientology Working. And in that policy, L. Ron Hubbard says, we'd rather have you dead than incapable. So if you do the relationship course, it leads to Xenu. If you do the communications course, it leads to Xenu. If you do the how to make work easier course, it leads to Xenu. All those things are all going to lead to you spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to rid yourself of space aliens.
You are full for the world is a better place without Scientology.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're dead set on that. Okay, very cool. Okay, so to wrap it up, give us a quick plug for the book. I know you give a couple of them, and obviously more of these stories are going to be probably in there. So what am I going to pick up if I read the book?
You're going to find out all there is to know about the international headquarters, how the day-to-day workings are, the schedule, what we did, where we ate. You're going to find a whole bunch of crazy stories about people that tried to escape and then were captured, about how I escaped with the help of the police. You're going to find out all kinds of craziness about David Miscavige. If you know people that are in Scientology, they might even be in the book too, because we shot movies with people, we did videos, films, audio recordings, all kinds of craziness that happened at the international headquarters. The place where I worked is called Golden Era Productions, and it was the propaganda arm of Scientology. So anything that was made to make Scientology look good, that's where we made it. That's what we did it. And the book's called Blown for Good, Behind the Iron Curtain of Scientology. You can get it on Amazon. You can go to blownforgood.com. You can order it direct from there. I'll even sign a copy for you.
I thought it was interesting how you self-published it and ended up winning all these awards, even though it was a self-pub.
Well, that's
very interesting on the level of interest.
Well,
ended up having.
The reason I did that is because a girl that wrote a book told me that Scientology threatened to sue the publisher, and she actually was at the Imp base as well. And she wrote a book, and they threatened to sue the publisher, and the publisher had already paid her for the book, and they never published it.
Wow.
So I realized in order to get the book published, I had to start a publishing company.
So if you listen to this whole interview and this topic interests you, go buy his book. We're going to leave the link below. You said it's on Amazon, Kindle. They can get it there. And what I want to hear from you is, I actually want to hear from you, what was your takeaway? If you're still watching this whole thing, what was your takeaway from the entire interview? You liked it? You didn't like it? What's your opinions? What do you think? Comment below as well. If you haven't subscribed, click on the sub button as well. Mark, thanks for coming up, buddy.
Thank you for having me.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.